Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. This is, I was about to say some really sort of cliched thing, like this is the home of language learning in the podcast world. Of course it's not. There are lots of great homes of language learning, but this is a place where I like to think if you care about language learning as a pursuit, as a skill that you want to develop, then I would like to think that this is the place to be. This is the home of that kind of thing for in the podcast world. This is where we talk about language learning and how to become a better learner. It's where, despite all the in amongst all of the blogging and videos and Facebook things that I do, the podcast here, this is the place where I really just speak my mind and tell you exactly what I think. So yeah, welcome. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already so that you get these episodes delivered to you regularly. I would hate for you to miss even one of them. Not least today, because we've got a cool episode coming up today. All right then, today we're going to start off with actually a review. I'm going to read out a review from iTunes because I want to thank those of you who have left reviews, because like I say, it's really, really important, the review thing, because it helps other people find the podcast, and that's the reason I keep going. Basically, we've got 38 reviews on the podcast. Now I don't know whether that's in the UK where I am or whether that's in the US. 38, yeah, could be better. I think maybe that's in the UK. I'm not sure. Anyway, if you haven't left a review on the podcast, I'd really like you to do so. You can go to iTunes, search for the podcast, and you'll find it there. Some guys left a 1-star review. And unfortunately, I can't actually find that. It doesn't come up. I think he just left the 1-star rating but didn't leave a review. So I don't know. Maybe that's another podcaster. Who knows? Anyway, I'd like to read out a review by Augustin Viani. I think that's how it's pronounced. Augustin Viani. He said, "Listen to Olly and this podcast. His approach works, yet he doesn't pitch it as the way or even as one way. I'm well on my way towards my Italian language goals of C2. Even if I have a long yet rewarding road in front of me, Olly keeps things fun without gimmicks and motivating through stories of hard-won realizations and tactics that have a common thread through all of it. When I re-listen to episodes or think I've heard the topic before, it always surprises me how Olly will find a new angle at which to approach a question and turn over another thought-provoking insight on the language learning journey. Well done, Olly." Thank you so much. Augustine, I don't know if that's your real name or if that's a handle, but I really appreciate the review. Thank you very much. It's also interesting that you mention the thing about the same topics coming up, because I've been thinking about this recently, and we're coming up to 250 episodes now, and the number of different topics that there are of course finite. There are never going to be an endless array of topics that we haven't heard of before. But what I have noticed myself from all of your questions is that, we can have the same topic, but, it's a funny thing. You can give advice or ideas to people, but it's a very human thing, a very natural thing to believe that our individual context or situation is unique and that the advice that you've heard doesn't apply. And you see this all over the place. I have... It's a very common thing in the kind of business coaching, business training, that you give advice about stuff, but then the person listening to it doesn't believe it because they think that their own business is unique, and so they kind of go off and look for more advice and more advice. Whereas actually, the challenge, I think, for a lot of us when we are given advice on anything that we're looking for help with in our lives, is to not fall into the trap of thinking, well, my situation's different, but rather to put your thinking cap on and try to find the commonalities or the kind of root lessons, the core wisdom behind the advice that you can then apply to your own situation. I always find that to truly take advice and apply it to our own unique situations, again, whatever the topic is, you've always got to do the last mile by yourself. You've got to take the spirit of the advice and the lessons within. But then you've got to think to yourself, right, now, here is exactly how it's going to apply to me. And really, no one can ever really give you that final bit. You've got to
you've got to go that last mile to connect the dots right at the end. So it's great to hear from this review that when we do cover new topics, or rather the same topics, that my efforts to put a kind of fresh spin on them are not in vain. So thank you for that review. All right, then today I'm answering an email question from Mark. And here's Mark's email. He says, "Hi Ollie, can you please give me some tips on how to learn a new language from scratch? Is it best to use one book or more? I have a grammar book and a colloquial book with CD. I'm trying to learn Mongolian, so next time I'm over there I can talk to my wife's family. If you've already answered this on a podcast, please let me know what number it is. Love the podcast, please keep them up." Okay, Mark, thank you very much for your question. And yeah, I've answered this before, but as you just heard in the review on iTunes, not only is everyone's situation unique, but also, something I didn't say, my own perspectives and opinions on things change over time too. So the kind of answer that I would have given to this question a couple of years ago is not the same as I would give now. So I'm just going to answer this with my current state of thinking. And over the last couple of years, I've learned a few languages from scratch. Not to particularly high levels, I have to say. I mean, I learned some Thai and some German, and both of those are very basic for me. But I did manage to get a very, pretty good grounding in those languages quite quickly. And in fact, if you go to YouTube and you find my channel, so you search for Olly Richards up on YouTube, you'll find a playlist with a 2-week experiment that I did in Thailand. So I went to Thailand for 2 weeks, and I took 10 lessons, and in the last day, you get a video recording of me speaking Thai for about 25 minutes with my teacher. And so I show you kind of step by step exactly what I did to learn Thai from scratch. So that would hopefully provide you some inspiration. I think the answer to this question, it depends on so many factors. To a large extent, it depends on the language. Because for example, if you're French and you're learning Italian, then it's a very different answer to the one I'm going to give you, which is that I assume you're a native English speaker and you're learning Mongolian, because Mongolian is very far away from English, whereas Italian is extremely close to French. And so slightly different rules apply, I think. Now, one of the challenges you've got when you learn a language like Mongolian is finding enough resources. Now, I had this problem when I was learning Cantonese, when I started to learn Cantonese, I should say, which was that there's very few good resources out there. So to a certain extent, you're stuck with what you can find. Now, you said you've got a grammar book and a colloquial book with CD. So the colloquial book, I'm going to assume that's a kind of teach yourself type book, where you just go through all the lessons from the beginning, and in a course type format. So what I would basically suggest, and this is my standard advice for someone starting a new language, my standard advice is this: you need to get as firm a grasp on the basics as you can as quickly as possible. I don't like taking classes as a beginner, because the problem with group, and these are group classes, because what happens is you are drip fed information in an artificial order over the course of the curriculum. So you are taught how to say I, you, he, she in lesson 1, and you're probably not taught the past tense until you've had 10, 15, 20 lessons. But actually, the past tense is super useful to learn, because we often want to say went or did or said. Right from the beginning, it can be very, very useful. So my approach to learning a new language now is that you need to get a good overview of all of the main grammatical elements of the language right at the beginning. I recently wrote a book called French Foundations, which is about French, obviously, so it's not going to help you so much here, Mark. But the whole premise of the book, and the book is going to be, I'm writing it as well in a lot of different languages, but the premise of the book is, look, I am going to teach you now everything you need to know about French grammar in 14 days. Now, I'm not going to teach you the whole of French grammar. That would be impossible. But I am going to stick my neck out and say, look, here are the things about French grammar that I think are important, I think you need to know, and I'm going to teach them all to you in a very short space of time. Not for you to memorize and learn perfectly, but for you to know what they are and be aware of the different considerations of the grammar. Because once you've got a picture of the language, then you can start studying in a more in-depth way, and everything you learn will be faster because you've got this big framework that you already understand about the language. You're not just running, scrambling around in the dark, blindfolded, having to sort of pick up every morsel of information you can and piece it together. We want to create this web, this network of understanding of all the different grammar points in the language and how they work together. And included in that is also pronunciation and, core vocabulary, so that you can actually, basically, communicate to in a basic level in the language. So, for you learning Mongolian, what I would suggest is that you take your colloquial book with the CD and you just devour that from beginning to end. Start in chapter 1 and then study every lesson until you reach the end of the book. And don't stop until you do. Don't be distracted. Don't do anything else. Don't buy any courses. Don't take lessons. Just literally go through the book. And the reason I suggest that is exactly what I just outlined with the French, which is that by the time you get to the end, you have a very good picture of what basic Mongolian is. Right? Now, you don't need to go through and do all the exercises in the book. You don't need to memorize any verb tables or anything like that. Go through the lessons, spend most of your time listening to the dialogues. So listen to the audio with the CD, reading along at the same time. Match the spoken words with the written words. Look those words up in the dictionary or the word lists that should come with the book. Just spend time with the language. You're not looking to achieve anything in particular. You're not looking to become fluent. You're not looking for anything. Your only aim should be to get to the end of that book. Now, let's say you do 1 chapter a day and the book's got 20 chapters, then you could probably finish it in a month. Anything else you do, I think, is basically avoiding the fundamental challenge, which is to learn the basics of the language. So what a lot of people do is they go for apps. They go on like Duolingo or whatever and learn vocabulary. Or they join a class because the class will keep them motivated maybe. Or they do this or that. I don't know what. They spend ages watching YouTube videos or browsing blogs or things like that. I'm a big fan of just doing one thing at a time. So go through your colloquial book, listen to all of the audio, focus on the dialogue, and just listen. After that, the next thing I would do is to get a teacher or a tutor and to start speaking. So go on italki. I don't know what the range of Mongolian teachers is like on italki, but I'm sure you'll find at least one. If not, then try to find someone locally. I have no doubt you will. Maybe if anyone listening knows any Mongolian tutors, then please come over to the show notes and leave a link there so for Mark to find. And then what you want to do then, Mark, is start to have lessons, but not lessons where you are taught the language, but rather lessons which you could call speaking sessions, where you just practice the stuff that you've learnt in the book. So go back to chapter 1, where you're taught how to say I, you, he, she, and then have your tutor just help you practice the stuff from the book. So they could help you with your pronunciation, which will probably need some work. You can do some Q&A, a bit of improvisation using the stuff from the chapter, and you might like to have a couple, 2 or 3 sessions on one chapter, and then you move on to the next chapter, and so on and so forth, so that you're just starting to speak and get used to getting the words out of your mouth. You're getting rid of the fear or the anxiety of speaking with somebody, and so you keep that up, and so gradually you are then becoming used to speaking Mongolian. Again, all this time, don't worry about how fluent you are. Don't worry about being able to survive conversations with your wife's family at this stage. All of that stuff comes with time. Your main focus needs to be just to build up this foundation, spend time with the language as regularly as possible, and the key is consistency. So all you're looking to do is to work on it every day, going through your textbook, listening to the audio, and then whenever you feel comfortable, starting to have regular speaking sessions, ideally 2 or 3 a week with your tutor, so you can start to get used to speaking and listening to the language. If you can keep that up, then in the next few months, you will already be confident in the language. Not to the point where you're highly fluent or anything, but you will feel like you speak Mongolian now. So that's my advice. On top of this, there are, of course, a million things I could add, but in the spirit of keeping things simple and making progress as quickly as possible, that's what I would suggest you do. All right, Mike, so I hope that's helpful. It's a really exciting prospect to go over to Mongolia and to actually speak the language with your in-laws. I'm sure they will appreciate it massively. So good luck, and let us know how you get on after you've actually been there. It sounds like a great trip. If you would like to ask me a question, either by email, you can email me in. Email into me at olly@iwillteachyoualanguage.com, or you can use the contact form on the website. Alternatively, you can leave me a voice message by going to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask. Now, today I'm going to end the podcast with a quote from Will Smith, who's a very inspirational guy, actually. If you're looking for someone to kind of give you a pep talk and get you psyched up for a challenge of any kind, he's very impressive. And there's lots of great interviews with him on YouTube, actually, where he talks about how he got started. Anyway, he said, "I know how to learn anything I want to learn. I absolutely know that I could learn how to fly the space shuttle because someone else knows how to fly it and they put it in a book. Give me the book and I do not need someone to stand up in front of the class." That kind of sums up my approach to language learning, really. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. And here at Story Learning, everything that I do is powered by stories, whether that's writing books, teaching lessons, crafting courses. My mission is to help everyone succeed at learning a new language through the power of story. And we now have comprehensive language courses in over 15 languages, from Spanish to French, Korean to Japanese, and across all levels from beginner to mastery. And you can take a 7-day free trial of any of these programs by visiting storylearning.com/courses. I've poured my heart and soul into creating these courses over the last 10 or so years, and we've helped tens of thousands of new students achieve their dreams of learning a new language, all through the power of story. So go ahead and take a free trial. There's no commitment. You can try out our method for free. See if this can also be the breakthrough for you that it's been for so many other people. storylearning.com/courses.